Hi, thank you. We're going to do an update on Kata Containers. I thought this is a 40-minute session, so I have too much for a 40-minute session. So we're going to go ahead and get started and give you some of the highlights of what we've been up to. Oh, it does show this. What are Kata Containers? We're just going to skip it. Y'all know what Kata Containers are. You're taking your container, and we're looking to add an extra layer of isolation. So we're not saying the containers are terrible. It's just we think defense in depth makes a lot of sense, depending on your security profile. So what we do on a per container basis, or per pod if you're in the Kubernetes space, is launch a lightweight virtual machine, and inside of that instantiate your container, and the rest of it is just us doing plumbing, so that way it's not a lot of overhead for you, and that it's just works. Yeah. So a brief history of time.
Yes. When the project, actually the work began in 2015, and Intel Kata Containers and Have Runway was open source at that time. After that, for about 2 years ago, 2 years later, yeah, then we announced the Kata Containers project in December 2017, and after that, in 1.5 years, we released the 1.0 through 1.6, and just in this month. And we got confirmed as the second project of the OpenStack Foundation, and then in I think May maybe.
Well, I don't know. It's not a May.
Yeah, it's alpha. It's alpha. Yeah.
You're predicting things. So updates on our design, like what we've been up to. The last time we gave an update, we were in Berlin. We talked about a lot of good things. It's a very nice talk. Samuel Ortiz, one of the architecture committee members, gave a talk on this. But basically, we did a lot of security fixes. Security enhancements, operability enhancements, performance enhancements, and added more architecture support. So what have we done since then? More enhancements, more hypervisors, and more architectures. So let's get into a little bit of that. So this is since essentially the end of last year. And one of the main items through IBM, they've already been very active as far as PowerPC support. We have also now added mainframe support. So if you like mainframes and you're Kata curious, you can jump right in. That was in the 1.5 release. Some of the operability enhancements, we do open tracing. So like if you use Jaeger or something like this, we have this available. I'm not sure how many people use it. I use it a lot, just as far as debugging and understanding timing and where things are going from a development standpoint. So this is less of an end user exciting thing and more of a, if you're into Kata and you want to test and really understand what's happening, it's a great feature. This has been in there before, but what we have now is it's working inside the agent, so inside the virtual machine as well. And then also, we're switching from defaulting from MACV-TAP to TC filter. And this is scheduled for 1.7, but TC filter is just a nice, easy way to kind of plumb from a vETH or whatever you have on your host into the namespace and then bring it into an actual virtual machine itself. And then V2 shim support, which I think we'll go into a little bit more detail on. For this is one of the most exciting things for me as far as wanting to use Kata in production and having a more productive and efficient usage of Kata. This is absolutely necessary. So maybe you want to talk about V2 a little bit.
Before V2 shim, we have this architecture, and when the user want to create a path from the Kubernetes, they will use Containerd, and Containerd will create the Containerd shim, and Containerd shim will call the Kata runtime and create Kata shim, and then all these shims will finally call the Kata proxy, then go to the pod sandbox and reach the Kata agent. Yes, so when you have n container inside the pod, you may have 2n plus 2 shims here, and so many processes. And when the shim v2 is implemented, we have only one process, and for the pod sandbox, yeah, that's the shim v2 things.
Then on top of that, with the V2, the only thing I would add is before Kata Kata runtime would be called, and it's a bit ephemeral. It'll just be called create the virtual machine, execute an OCI command, and then get out of the way. And it's always, it doesn't have a state in that, and it would always be writing to and from a disk and everything. But the main point that I'm highlighting is it was an OCI compliant, and by OCI compliant, I really mean we were just kind of doing the run C CLI. And trying to make sure, hey, you can do that with run C, can I do this with Kata? Okay, let me try to do this. And it isn't very efficient for us as a virtual machine to just do what run C does. Because you know what, run C is not a virtual machine. They have assumptions that they have C groups and namespaces, and they can just go in and get information for whatever they want on the host. So in working with the Containerd team, Michael Crosby had a suggestion of, hey, here's a new interface that I'm looking at that I think will be much improved for anybody trying to do a hypervisor or alternative, including like a gvisor or anything else. Yep. And it brings into that CRI, into this V2 shim API idea is like, please give me the container metrics, which is huge. As far as now as a virtual machine based runtime, we can do the right thing instead of just assuming that a host C group should give you the details of how your individual C groups are running.
Yes. Before the shim v2, the container shim will assume the containers as a process in the host, and so we have to had a process for that. But right now we don't have this assumption here, so we can only have a shim v2 as an endpoint.
Yeah, this is a very good collaboration with different folks in CRI to get this going. So at the end of the year. All right. I was completely checked out, and we were very excited about the 1.4 release, and 1.5 was like, all right, before the end of the year, we have to finish this. And we were all pretty much, I was done completely. And then there was a AWS reInvent or whatever massive show, and they're like, hey, we have a new hypervisor that's going to take over the world. And I was just like, oh, okay, let's see what this is about. Let's discuss this a little bit. I don't know how to. So it's a virtual machine monitor, and it's open sourced by AWS at the end of 2018. And from their GitHub page, I'll let you read what is Firecracker. I think we were very fortunate that they did it at AWS. So we had a couple of weeks for KubeCon because we, thanks with OSF, we had a nice booth there. And we were able to talk to a lot of the cloud native folks. And every single person comes up and is like, hey, what do you think about Firecracker? And they're kind of like saying like, haha. And I was just like, it's awesome. It's completely great to have another hypervisor out there. Something else that, we've been doing work. We don't necessarily think that, QEMU as is yesterday and today gives us so much that we don't need. And everything we don't need is attack surface. We immediately, once it came out, talked with a lot of folks on the team and to get an understanding. And I love how opinionated the project is. As far as their design is security first, and everything else is going to follow after that and figure out how to make it work. So we were busy. And we enabled support for it in 1.5, which is like very beginning of right after Christmas, New Year, like some horrible time. I don't know why we did that on our calendar. So we have support for QEMU. We have support for NEMU, which is like a stripped down version of QEMU, very minimal configuration. And now we have support for Firecracker as well. What does that mean as far as how do you use Kata containers in this? I have to give a bit of background on Kubernetes for about 30 seconds on what a runtime class is, I think. Available since 1.12, alpha then. If you go to 1.14, it's a beta feature, so it's just enabled all out by default. And really, it's the way that you can tell, as a cluster administrator that I have multiple runtimes on the system. And you can expose it to your workloads however you want to do it. So now on a per workload basis, you can say, this one's really nasty, it's going in a hypervisor. This one I completely trust, it's fine. This one's a really nice microservice, and I don't trust it at all. This would be perfect for Firecracker. And you can do this now on a workload basis. And it's supported by Cryo and Containerd. And just because pictures are better, I'll show them in a second. But we support both. And if you, in our default configuration now, if you were to install Kata as of 1.5, I hope I'm right, you'll have a Kata QEMU and a Kata Firecracker available to you. And similar if you want to integrate it with the V2 shim. And for the picture, this is just a visual of kind of what I was trying to say, a hand drawing of, you're on your node. On your node, you have Kubelet. Kubelet's the one who thinks that they're the one who runs all the containers. They don't. They outsource it to somebody else. They outsource it to Cryo, or maybe to Containerd through the CRI interface. And now they're going to, based on the workload, actually create your workload. And again, based on the annotation, well, not an annotation, based on the runtime class, by default, if you just have everything set up today out of the box, everything's going to run with run C. And that's what you see on the far left. But now you can say, I want to run, again, like I said, I want to run it with Firecracker, or I prefer to run it with QEMU. And there are trade-offs on that, and I'll get into it a little briefly. But per node, per workload, across your cluster, you can run all of these things. For sure, like one of the first things I usually try to say in an overview of Kata is I'm not telling you that run C is terrible. I'm not telling you that you should replace everything with Kata. I'm saying that this is a good additional item to have on your system. And depending on your security profile, you really should consider some of these workloads should be running in a virtual machine. Or you can do it by default too, but that's a different thing. Words for my words. And a bit of status. So with minimal design of the VMM, there are limitations. So if you are like a very cloud native Kubernetes, like I have all these frameworks that I have and want to do, and I'm just going to use Firecracker, YOLO, delete everything, it's good. That's too bad, you shouldn't have. There's a few things. Basically, the first one is there's no file system sharing with the host. So do you like secrets? Do you like config maps? Things that are going to be changing dynamically on the host that you assume your workload is going to be able to make use of. That's not going to work out of the box right now with the integration with Kata Containers. Same thing, do you want to pass 17 GPUs and 3 NICs to your workload? There's no device pass, there's no like a VFIO available. That's not the idea of what they're going after. Dynamic resizing, so if you look at like vertical pod scaling or anything like that, I think you should probably delete and create a new one anyway, but it's not really possible to just hot plug vCPUs and do all these things that you're used to if you love QMP and you're used to QEMU. And the one thing I want to highlight here is these aren't negative. These are opinions on this is what it takes for the security profile they're trying to create. Sharing your file system is crazy if all you have is a static file, right? If you just have a text file that you want to put in there, like your index.html, like that doesn't make any sense to expose a full file system to it. Similarly, for hardware device support, this is a lot more of a microservice ephemeral workload type of thing. So, disclaimer: it won't fit all of your needs, but if it does, it's going to be a nice option. I have just a spaghetti drawing I was going to show. And I think maybe the takeaway on this is that over the last year, we've done a lot of work with a lot of different cloud providers who've been very supportive in Kata Containers and making sure that Kata Containers works on their cloud and helps for our CI. It's a little bit harder for us because we can't just run in any old node. We need either bare metal or ability to run a virtual machine. So specific nodes on Azure, bare metal machines on AWS, virtualized enabled ones for VexHost and everything else. So we have a lot of different people who've been contributing, and it's great. We do utilize all of them right now, and we're looking to better utilize them even further going forward. So this really helps testing and quality of our code, but also testing and helping to make sure that it works well on all these cloud providers. So I think I'm done talking for a while. Maybe you can talk for a bit.
No update about this.
Yeah, this is a good one for you.
Yeah, no update. Yeah. Actually, we have an election, but the result is unchanged.
Yeah, which is good, I think.
Yeah, and about the project status, yeah, we got confirmed and confirmed, April 8th, and Eric have a.
Yeah, I just put that in there because I really like the quote. They're always full of puns. I really like the register. So usually when I start meetings now, I say Verdi Container Wizards instead of like y'all or something like that. That's how we address each other now.
Yeah.
So. This is just, why did I even have this here? This is just showing from the very beginning of the project to 2018 what's kind of changed as far as contribution and diversity of contribution. We went, well, you can see it here. We go from 28 people active to 256, 16 authors to 77 authors in the following year.
Yeah.
And it's not changing in 2019.
Actually, the 2017, we only have 1 month.
Yeah, well, this is true as well. So the number of PRs isn't exciting there, but I think that the growth and diversity of the project is really critical. And as far as an update, that's not changed. And if anything, it's gotten even more so as more people are putting Kata in production or getting into the late stages of dog fooding Kata. We are getting a wider diversity. And with this diversity, I think it's the most important people. I really like being involved in this project, but I am not a cloud provider. I work at Intel. And I don't have these opinions of like, hey, we're doing this at scale, and I think you should do this instead of that. So for me, this is very, very exciting. I think it's a really cool time in the project.
For me, it is.
Yes. And just kind of a list, and I hate making lists because I'm sure that there's somebody who's not on there or anything like this, but just an idea. What I'm trying to show is there's a lot of different OSVs. There's a lot of different silicon vendors as well, and I think that that's very important. I just highlighted it to show health of the project and diversity of the project. Future plans.
Yours.
So Shu did a good job talking about Containerd v2 shim. We've been working with the maintainers of the Cryo project as well to implement the same interface. So that way we can have a better coupling and a better experience for integration with Kubernetes or any other CRI implementer. There's a good amount of work with Cilium right now, just making sure that a lot of these design patterns of Cilium work. But also there's some interesting ways to highlight, if you don't trust ePPF, maybe you can run it in the VM instead. Run those rules inside, and it's, some people, it's a VM running in the kernel. It should be fine. It's a nice architecture set, but this is a nice feature that's being worked on by someone in the community. VirtuoFS is something that's very active right now that we're hoping to get in the 1.7 release, which is supposed to be frozen tomorrow. In longer term, there's a lot of, well, I guess we have a couple of minutes. Do we? 2 minutes? Okay, so basically this is highlighting that we're not doing anything super exciting. There's nothing like amazing awesome on here. It's kind of getting a little bit boring. We're continuing to make sure that people are getting in production and getting what they need, that our footprint is decreasing, that we're getting a better security profile on it. There's no major outstanding features that we're looking at. We're a runtime, we create containers, and we're trying to do it even better. So the changes that we're doing are refactoring our code to make it simpler, more maintainable, and lighter weight for the end user.
So we still want to introduce something to reduce the consumption. That's really important for us. Yeah.
We are on the internet. You can come find us. And I can, for the last couple minutes, for Q&A.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah.
Any plans to defork NEMU?
So with the NEMU stuff, the idea was let's do it, and I don't work on NEMU, and whatever. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how far can it go as just an experiment and showing, and then try to upstream. And there is a lot of work on the upstreaming. With the 4.0 release, I think the Kconfig stuff got in, and there's a lot of other changes that are narrowing that gap. So yeah, it's not a sustainable thing. It's more of a pushing. And frankly, with the Firecracker and other like Rust VMM stuff, super exciting. I think it really is pushing the boundary of, maybe some of these ideas are pretty important for making sure we get in. Something like this, yeah, I think so. Which is super interesting, with all the different Rust crates and everything else. It really is becoming like silly modular. Like, yo, I made my VM, I just made my own.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.